being as cold as it gets, doing things inside is probably the better idea to do. And drinking obviously ties into that as well. So, but making that leap from, you're a good home brewer to I'm going to open my own business can be quite daunting. As I imagine kind of having that bridge of working at this other establishment and kind of figuring out what to do, what not to do, obviously working on bigger equipment and then getting the, instant feedback from people that, they may have just come in from the restaurant, but they're actually there, they'll try the beer as well. They'll give you feedback that way. How did it kind of fully coming around to be like, okay, I kind of have an idea to what I want to do now. Now let's do it on my own. Was that kind of a scary leap, or was it more something that, in your head was kind of a necessity and needed to happen?
Yeah. Like I said, Nick kind of had that, little bit more like, just being used to what it's like, owning a small business and that whole thing. So for me, I was teaching, and so my wife, was really supportive of it, but at the same time was like, let's keep your teaching credentials up to date and all that in case it doesn't work out, you can just go back to teaching. But so I actually ended up doing both, teaching and working at the brewery for about 2 years, which involved, doing my regular school day. And then, Nick helped out, quite a bit more in the brew house then because we didn't have as many moving pieces on the financial end and, just growth and general stuff. But, in either case, I was, evenings, weekends, pretty much year round for 2 years, to get it going. And then, it was about 3 years ago now, then I finally, put my 2 weeks in, or, my letter of resignation, which, if you're doing a little bit of math, it worked out. I turned in my letter, February of 2020. And so then we kind of all know what happened later on in 2020. And it's like, oh shit, you're literally quitting your day job when this whole, COVID and shutdowns and all that. But we're still here and we made it through that time. And, honestly now, things are just continuing to sort of, develop in a way that I guess, the best way is like getting more accustomed to like the seasonality of, the bar and restaurant industry. And, as far as workload, we've been hiring. I think Nick just, look back, it's at least 2 people per year we've been hiring. So, getting more help and splitting up some of our duties, taking some stuff off of our plates slowly. And as of right now, so I have one guy, there's a program we did where, people getting out of the military can learn a trade. And, it's called the Skill Bridge program, and it's part of their like final few months of service. They instead get paid to go off site and learn a trade, from this apprenticeship company. So I signed up to do that. And so now, like, I've gone from working like 70, 80 hours a week teaching and brewing to now I have one, and in January I'm going to be starting a second assistant brewer. So it really is a story of kind of growth over time too.
That's amazing. Now, I guess from what you've heard your other teacher friends go through when it came to the pandemic and afterwards, would you have rather gone through what the teachers had to go through or what y'all had to go through at the brewery?
I 100% would not have wanted to teach. I had lots of people tell me, "Oh man, you picked a good time to get out." So yeah, but and honestly, I would say probably the one. Location helped. I will say that North Dakota, being a more conservative state and stuff like that, like the shutdowns were not for as long or as intense as some other places. But also, like, our community was super supportive. They came out, like, when there was an actual shutdown, they came out and bought off sale from us. They made the trip down to make sure that they were showing us support. And on the flip side of that, we had this canning machine that we had never really used. We just figured we should have this thing because it could be useful someday. And then all of a sudden, almost like overnight, that was all we were doing. Luckily, we could transition our staff, like, okay, you're not bartending anymore. You're going to come in and you're going to help us can. So they were still getting hours. We were still putting out product. We just kind of had to transition how we were doing things.
Yeah, I was curious about that because I know, I mean, I'm here in Texas, and obviously our lockdown lasted all of 2 minutes. So everybody was obviously different the way they did it. I've talked to people in Louisiana and then California, and of course they were a lot stricter than we were, or what you guys may have experienced as well. But the whole, I'm so glad you guys had that canning machine, because I've talked to so many other breweries that had to get one during the pandemic because they didn't think that they really needed one, or they would have some outsource do it. And then they realized, you know what, let's just bite the bullet, do it, and get this to-go stuff going, because a lot of the breweries, unfortunately, didn't make it because they didn't know how to use that magic pivot word. And so when it does come to, getting stuff out the door and needing to do stuff to go, you kind of need a canning machine, and you kind of need something to really kind of help your business grow and allow people to still support you like they did with you guys, and come show their support by buying it to go.
Yeah, that worked out pretty nice in our favor. And after, everything else opened up, our canning never really slowed down, so it kind of just slid into a big part of our operations. And yeah, so sometimes silver lining on things like that.
Exactly. Now, I saw that you guys do lots of events like trivia, book fairs, and other events. How important is it to not only help the community like the way you are, but also give them a place to come together and just communicate?
Yeah, we've always just kind of, I think our motto is if we're having fun, our patrons are having fun. So I come from a musical background and have been playing in bands for years, so I had a lot of those connections. So it's easy for us to put on concerts and have contacts for all these musicians I've met over the years. So and also I've run the sound for the shows and had some of the equipment already, so that was an easy transition. We kind of built a permanent stage outdoors, so in the summer we put on a lot of concerts, a lot of events. We've had weddings, we've had high school, anniversary parties, anything you can think of. And yeah, like you said, trivia, I think probably one of our biggest ones, outdoors in the summer on a nice night when we throw a trivia, it's like 200 plus people playing outside. So it's pretty cool. It's important to, come up with fun ideas and team up with the community. We do different stuff, like we do a 5K dog jog, and where everyone starts and ends at the brewery, and they run with their pets. And we kind of tapped on a couple years back a beer mile event to go with that. We do another big one that we do is beer Olympics, where we come up with fun little mini games. And everyone, 2-man teams, and it's like a 4-hour event of all these crazy games. And yeah, we like to have fun and make sure that everyone else that comes can enjoy our brewery and kind of have fun with us.
That's awesome. I love that.
I just want want to piggyback one thing on that too. We, like Nick said, we do a lot of events at our place too. But on top of that, we are also doing, it works out to at least probably 3 or 4 times a year. We have people asking us to do special event beers to either like commemorate something or as a partial fundraiser for a project. So for example, that tree beer where we cut down the juniper tree I mentioned earlier. So that was actually the tree was dying. It was on its way out. And so we cut it down, and part of the proceeds for the sales on that beer was donated to not-for-profit in town who's planting trees. It's called 1,000 Trees for Minot. Another one we did was the Minot Chamber Choir celebrated their 50th anniversary last winter, and so we did kind of like a festive. It's called a kvass beer, which is a bread beer, historical from when like brewers and bakers were really highly interactive and sort of helped each other out. As sort of like a throwback. They do a Renaissance feast every Christmas, so we figured that was like a Renaissance type beer. Like Nick said, our building is flooded in the past, and so the city council or some committee, I can't remember what it was exactly, asked us to do a commemorative beer for the anniversary of the flood. And so, it's not just community involvement through events at our place. We're also doing special release beers and other types of like philanthropic work.
That's so awesome that you guys are giving back to the community and other people as well, because I know a lot of people will have, they'll have their place, but I don't know if they just don't think about it or they just don't make it a priority. But, when you have a space like that, you have to open it up for everybody so that, just because you're a brewery doesn't mean you're just going to get random people just showing up. You need to actually open it up for people that either may not know you're around or have even passed your brewery and like, oh, I like that place or I like that building a lot. I just never been inside of it. And so now they have a reason to. And so you're giving them the options of things that they can do. Even if they don't drink, they can come check you guys out and then be like, oh, this is really cool. And then they tell their friends and, they tell their friends. Now, you guys, I'm looking at your beer list here on Untapped, and it is pretty sour heavy, but you guys are really all over the place, with Kolsch's, with your double box, your stouts, obviously. Do you guys kind of try to follow trends, or is it something that you are just looking at what you guys really want to drink, and then it just happens to be other people are interested in as well?
I would say there's probably a little bit of, let me just put it this way. I think you'd be naive to not pay attention to the trends.
Yeah.
But in that same vein, like we're still not necessarily like compromising how we like to brew or like what we're brewing. A really good example of that is if you went to a few of the other places in the state or probably anywhere in the country at this point, if you went and looked at their draft list, a good portion of them is probably going to be IPAs, and most of them are going to be hazy types, and that's fine. And we have one of those that we keep around usually, sometimes two, but that's about the most. So really our biggest thing, we like to keep a really good variety. We always like to have a couple sours, a couple light beers, something dark, maybe something in the mid-range, like an amber ale or something like that, a red IPA, something that's a little in between. And then something that's maybe a little out there too. Right now we don't necessarily have one, but there's a couple coming up. My assistant brewer kind of brought this one to my attention that we're going to try this spring. It's called a Cot Busser, which is like a honey type kind of a pre